you know, it strikes me so much that the rates for gay suicide among young people are still as high as they've ever been. And this is after, what, 3, 4 generations of a gay liberation movement. We're in the middle of an enormous crystal meth epidemic in every gay community, particularly urban centers from coast to coast. You know, we have entire scores, whole communities, particularly of younger gay men, you know, like doing willful harm to themselves, in some form, almost, you might say, committing suicide. Everybody at this point, here certainly in the United States, knows that, you know, you can contract HIV without using safe sex practices. So what is this great resistance to using protection? Why are we, what is this willful ignorance not to know, not to participate in our well-being and in our health? What shadow story is being cruelly being played out time and time again? Or as, you know, Ram Dass might say, you know, the wheel of suffering, you know, keeps on turning. And how many times, how many revolutions of that will do we have to take, you know, to wake up to ourselves, to wake up to our amazing potential? You know, I think the awakening of gay people is one of the greatest stories of all times. And if we treat it as a miracle, as a fantastic, marvelous story, and maintain absolute curiosity and excitement about it, we'll be okay. But if we're trying to deaden ourselves, to become sleepers rather than people who are awake, then we really truly are a lost tribe. And you know, we'll be doomed to wander in the desert for another how many years, how many centuries?
Sociobiologists and other people, anthropologists who have investigated this question for the last 100 years are almost unanimous. E.O. Brown, for example, at Harvard, the father of the sociobiology field, has says in his book on human nature that gay and lesbian people carry the altruistic impulse in our species, that we carry something around the betterment and furtherance and support of other people that allows our species to keep evolving.
And a lot of this came out during the AIDS epidemic, of course, where there was never a community in history that did more than gay people for people with AIDS.
There was an awful lot of dying in a fast and short time. You know, friends, relatives, fathers, mothers, children were dying, and there was a lot of hurt in our community, a lot of places to be of service.
Taking care of and loving and being generous and being unselfish. And so I think we haven't looked enough at this side of ourselves.
Shortly after I graduated from high school in 1965, I took a dose of LSD and ended up having what I later was able to identify as an archetypal death experience, a kind of a shamanic death in which I had the experience of my physical body dying. It actually skeletonized, and I could perceive in a kind of bilocal vision, looking outside of my body and down on top of my body at the same time. I had a overwhelming sense of the energy in the universe, manifesting into the material world. I had a sense of a kind of a cosmic soul, and also a tremendous empathy and relationship to suffering on the planet. not just human beings, but just the whole angst of being, of what it means to be, conscious, being on this planet.
Well, it's very difficult to talk about matters of spirit and soul because they're elusive things. They're not what you call tangibles of people trying to explore, the mysteries. And I think that's what we have to entertain more than anything, and that is our curiosity about these matters, and not just to say, okay, we've got legal rights in 38 states now, and maybe that's enough and we can rest. That isn't enough. That's just the surface.
You usually find this in roles that involve cutting-edge things, where there's something pushing back the boundaries a little further than they were before. I've heard some people refer to this as consciousness scouts that were out there kind of on the edges of consciousness.
In those days, we say, "Oh, your mind just got blown," But the truth is that in another culture, had an experience like that happened, whether it be spontaneous or induced by a plant medicine or a psychotropic, there would have been elders in the community to help me frame that experience. There would have been elders in the community to help me integrate that experience, and there would have been elders in the community to help me make some relevance and sense out of that experience, and there weren't in my community. Being a middle-class white boy in the suburbs of Los Angeles.
One of my teachers at Malidoma Somé, who is initiated elder with the Dagara people in West Africa, in Burkina Faso. And in his traditional village, there are gay and lesbian people. They're not called gay and lesbian people, but they're there. And he says in his traditional village, they refer to them as gatekeepers. I said, gatekeepers, what do you mean by that? He said, well, the gatekeepers are important is because they are the people who keep harmony between this world, the visible world, and the invisible world, the world of ancestors and spirits. They also keep balance and harmony between people in the village, and they keep balance and harmony between the people and nature. Now, it isn't that we begin doing it. We play those roles whether or not we're aware of them or not. Gravity works whether you believe in it or not. In the same way that gay identity, gay roles that we play, we're doing them whether we're conscious of them or not. The only difference right now is that we have an opportunity to do this dance in life with a consciousness and awareness that we never had before.
Our culture doesn't provide much eldering. And I've looked for my models really in cultures other than our own, indigenous cultures, Native American communities, where elders are revered, as were gay people.
We're regarded as mountain Indians here, we people. And the mountains play a great importance in our life. And the mountain range that you see out in back you here is something that's sacred to us. It's always a very comforting presence to have these mountains there and these valleys there. And that's why the people refer to this place as Nuatepia, meaning our people's homeland, our people's place, because there has been Shoshone people in this place for over 9,000–10,000 years. That's a long, long time. Before that, there was other Indian people here. So it's
we're literally standing on the bones of your ancestors.
Oh yes, the bones of our ancestors are right here, and that's why we always have that saying, walk softly on the earth, mother, because you are stepping on the bones of your ancestors, the people that have been here before, and hopefully there'll be people here walking on our bones in the future if we play our cards right. When I was growing up, there was no what we refer to as two-spirit elders for me to talk to. I would say probably in the 1970s and 80s, two-spirit people started looking around and rediscovering and reclaiming our history. And I think in the old time, they were probably regarded as a third gender, as a third sex. They weren't regarded as men, and they weren't regarded as women. And they could go back and forth. In that in-betweenness, the old-time Indians viewed that as an excellent conduit excellent conduit for spirit. That spirit moved with these people a lot better than regular man, women type of people. And consequently there was great power there. And they were regarded as true medicine people. When I look at that picture, I go, okay, there's the Tenawite. She's in the middle. And they gave her a beautiful buckskin dress to wear for that occasion to honor her. Now there's all these other men dancing around her. The question I have is, well, what does that make those men?
Well, what kind of a connection are we talking about? Are we talking about a physical connection? Are we talking about some other kind of relationship where she may have given them a name or something, or
Yeah. It was all of that.
all of that?
Yeah, but it was all looked on in the way of spiritual. Because this person was a spiritual being, honored as a spiritual being, a powerful spiritual being, an intermediary with spirit for the tribe. So it was a great honor to be connected with this person, you see, that way. Until what happened? Tell me what happened.
Christianity and colonization and
Yeah, that happened.
forced acculturation and
Yeah, that
ideas of sin and
Indian people, traditional Indian people, the way back then, I speak in context of back then, did not know Christian sin and all the baggage that goes with it. The missionaries came out and of course one of the first people that they seen that was really nerve-wracking to them were these people, these strange people that just didn't fit in with anything that they knew of. They didn't have any kind of cultural relevance or cultural background to even know what these people were. All that they could see were these men dressing like women and these women dressing like men, and they didn't understand the cultural context that these individuals existed in the tribal societies that they were living in. That was one of the first traditions that went underground, and everything disappeared because starting in 1880 until 1935, I believe it was, the practice of any type of Indian traditions or religion was outlawed. You couldn't do it. It was against the law. You'd be jailed for it. I'm happy that my generation of people have paved a way for the tradition to resurface, but also be reinterpreted for something that's relevant for them today. And hopefully it will continue on.
And I suppose as an elder you would want to have a vision, that would be part of doing the chore of an elder, would be to have a vision. Because without vision the people perish. And so as an elder walking that role, doing that chore, you'd have to begin with a vision and maybe interacting in a good way with life on the earth again. And without that happening, I don't see the need for any elders. Without that happening, everybody gets to die. As hopeless a death as Black Elk, who looked at the tree of life and looked at our way in it and seen that it was no more. And hoped and prayed maybe that deep in the earth somewhere buried, unknown, there would be some spark of life left alive that would spring forth after these pestilent fires had passed and bloom again. And so that was the only hope that he had to hang on to, if that was hope at all.
That's my portrait of the founder of the modern gay liberation movement, talking about the formation of the Mattachine Society here in Los Angeles and how difficult it was to be gay. If you found out, you'd lose your job, your family wouldn't talk to you, you might even be imprisoned. So these were very brave men who started the movement here in Los Angeles. He was later called before the House of HUAC, House of Un-American Activities Committee, because he had been introduced to the Communist Party by his boyfriend in the early 30s was Will Greer, the actor who played Papa Walton on The Waltons. But because of those early experiences, he was labeled a communist, and that led him to being expelled from the Mattachine Society. And he and his lover, John Burnside, moved to a pueblo in New Mexico, where they lived for many years. Very poor existence, kind of on the land with the, they lived on an Indian reservation. They had a little modest house there until finally, one day, he got a call from Donkel Hefner, who had been reading some of Harry's writings, made the journey out. They connected and became friends. And it was from that meeting that they decided to do the first gathering of radical fairies, which was a seminal event in the history of gay male consciousness. It was, I think, the first conference of radical fairies was as significant to our spiritual revolution, or evolution, as the Stonewall revolution had been to our civil rights part of our lives a decade before. I cannot underestimate how important this experience was. The gathering came and it went very quickly, but the repercussions of it soon trickled out. And so soon there were calls being issued for regional gatherings in every corner of the United States and in Canada, and national gatherings. So the next year, 300 gay men met in the mountains outside of Colorado. And the year after that, we met in the high desert of New Mexico. And soon there were gatherings in the San Diego, all up and down California, from San Diego to Sonoma, Oregon. There was a gathering there, and eventually about 80 acres of beautiful rolling farmland was purchased as sort of a fairy sanctuary. But it was Harry's central vision that was the core of it all.
I came out into the fairy community in the early 80s, and I've always known that I love men, but what I love about the fairy community is that it's more than that, and it's more of a spiritual thing. It's something that informs our existence, and there is also the grounding in the two-spirit tradition, Berdache inspiration, and also in the medieval Europe, pre-medieval Europe, Faggot tradition. And one of the things that I've loved from this community in the beginning, since the beginning, the fairy community, has been that we do embrace all ages and all sizes and all types, and it's not that you're dead when you're 25. It's also very interesting, the question of elder, because we lost so many people. And we're here at Wolf Creek, and I remember being in gatherings at Wolf Creek in the 80s and 90s where you would look around the circle and a very sizable portion of people would not be there who had been there the year before. So we sort of have had a hole in our elders. It's been really interesting to watch the overlap between the Naraya community based in the Shoshone and other Native American traditions and the fairy community.
And there's some people here that of course say, oh, you're giving away Indian secrets. You know, something that should be just shared with Indian people. And my teachers, Oman Weesaw and Emma Pohype Dan and those people, they taught me something just the opposite, which I have a mandate and fulfilling in my life, and that's this. They told me this, and it was said in such a wonderful way by my teacher, Weesaw. He said, the Indian teepee, speaking of the teepee being a spiritual thing, not a physical thing, but he says, the Indian teepee has no doorknob, it has no lock, and anybody with the right heart and the right mind can go inside, can go in through that door. And there's many, many wonderful Indian things, because he's speaking in kind of an analogy kind of a thing, that can be shared with those people, with those kind of people. So I just don't cast my pearls before swine, so to speak. You know, I look at a person, and if they have the right heart, and if they have the right mind, and they sincerely want to know, and not use it for any kind of exploitation or any type of anything like that, well then I'll gladly share what I know with anybody. Because after all, old man Black Elk, he said, you know, there's all those powers, red, white, black, and yellow in the circle there. And although a lot of people disagree, to me, the way it was explained to me, that not only represents the directions, but it also represents the 4 races of mankind within that circle. And you know, so there's there's room within that circle for anyone.
So I'm wondering if it's that mandate, whether it comes from one's teachers or whether it comes from one's spirit, that is some distinction between what makes one person an elder and another person maybe just older, you know, or aged.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, you know. What can you share with the people? What can you share with the coming generations of your experiences in life and your traditions and the things that you know about those traditions? Are you going to keep them to yourself, or are you going to share them with people? Are you going to be able to talk to them and be involved in the community, you know, and things? Some people, older people, have a way of just shutting themselves in. Or sometimes in our society, in our contemporary society, people don't know how to ask the questions to these people. Or they can kind of speak to them in kind of a condescending way. You know, like they're third person. They're not here, you know, or they treat them like little children, you know, and they'll talk about them with them sitting in the room.
So there are all these different stereotypes that hit you in the face. You know, I'm in a hurry, get out of my way, Charlie. May I assist you across the street?
And it's very disturbing where in traditional Indian society, and again I speak about traditional Indian society, those people are respected for being very powerful individuals that have the last say, and of course you're going to include them in on every conversation. You're not going to talk about them third hand. You know, they're an integral part of the life of the family, the extended family.
To see this concept of elder, and a very, very, very strong concept of elder, where, you know, if someone's been around and they've done good work and everyone knows they've done good work, when they say something about what's going on or maybe what we want to think about, people sit and listen. It's also been fascinating to watch that spread within the fairy community and the gay community, and to watch people fight with it, because a lot of people have daddy issues or whatever it is, and also coming out of a very strong anarchist, anti-patriarchal bent. We have this whole sort of theory that sort of says we don't want to do that, but there's also recognition that it works.
Gay elder, to me that speaks to somebody who's pushed the boundaries of consciousness and of acceptance in the world and made a space for me to exist here in this world. And I think about the legacy of, you know, Harry Hay and all those who gave so much of their life to the gay liberation movement. They were all pushing the envelope and created a space for me to be who I am today. This year in particular, I've really stepped into a much deeper relationship with certain elders in my community. I announced to my community that I was really desiring a manhood ritual. Not only was it empowering for me to be able to turn to my community and trust that they would guide me through this gateway, but it was also really empowering for them to be able to step into their magic and step into their role as elders and as brothers. As a child, you take a lot from your tribe. Once you step into manhood, you take on the responsibility of giving to your tribe and bringing sustenance back to your tribe and being a part of the tribe's ability to thrive and sustainability. And there's been a common misconception that the youth just want to party and that we just want to get drunk, and that's not my experience. That's not my reality. I want to connect with spirit in this lifetime. Our elders have so many rich stories that I haven't even heard. And last night at the fire, you know, people were speaking about the gay liberation movement and telling their experience of Stonewall.
Well, you know, to me, story is everything, because by talking about your process, you're making intimacy.
Before I met Tom and we became lovers, Tom was one of my literary elders. I read The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon, right around the time it came out. And that book swept through our circle of friends at the time, and we were all just completely enchanted by it.
There's a certain way I addressed spirit there too that I haven't in other books.
It was beyond sex. The sex wasn't sex. It was about connection to another's heart and through the body, and which was so different than my own experience.
It would benefit us to just sit with each other more often and close our eyes and just feel each other's presence and feel the, each other's individual purpose in being here and how that contributes to our collective purpose and our collective intention.
I was going to the local community college before I went to state, and while I was there I was a member of the Film Society. So the highlight for that year's festival was going to be James Broughton. I was out, but it was 1972, you know, and I hadn't met any really what I would call positive role models. So I thought, what am I going to do? Who am I going to find as a role model? Someone I can really look up to. And there was a reception in the lobby of this beautiful theater there on the campus afterwards. And I was on one end, pouring little glasses of white wine or something for the crowd. And James was way on the other end of this long lobby. And it was like out of a corny movie or something. I mean, he saw me through the crowds. You know, there's this little kid, local kid. And I saw him, and I was kind of shy, and I must have looked away like, oh, he's looking at me. And he, all of a sudden, strode through the lobby, and it's like the crowd parted. It was like, the Red Sea or something. People just got out of the way, and he came right up to me. And he looked at me, and he took my head in his hand like this, and he held it. And he looked me right in the eyes with this piercing look of acceptance and love. And he said, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." And then he bent down and he kissed me on the cheek. And that's all I remember. I think he turned and went off to the party, and I just stood there like I'd been hit by white lightning. Because somewhere deep down in my gut, I knew that this was a blessing, a benediction. It was like a spiritual transmission between an older gay man and a younger gay man. And from that moment, somewhere I knew it was going to be all right.
We were seeing that young men in their 20s and early 30s were really having difficulty moving into more adult roles in the community. And so we focused more on helping young men make that transition. And then the light went on. Well, the reason these young men are having such difficulty making that transition is there are no elders there, there are no adults there to help them.
And I guess in the lesbian community, age is looked on in a whole different way. Lesbians really respect the older lesbian. They just do.
And so maybe about 5, 6 years ago, we initiated our first gay tribal elder workshop and facilitated, and we've done many since then and gotten clearer and sharper around these issues. And thank God, one of the things that's happened over the years, more and more and more older gay men hear this issue.
There's a lot one confronts, doing a workshop like this. Not the least of which is, the introspection and the recollection of one's past, and, grieving of lost opportunities, or, the betrayals and the dark nights. And because part of the task was to look at, both your successes and your failures in life. So, there's some reckoning.
If we're going to become elders, one way of thinking about how an elder might be is looking at the people who eldered us, especially gay elders. What qualities about them influenced our lives?
They had a persistent vision. They knew that inauthentic living, they knew that closets, they knew that sexual dysfunction, those things were just not where our future was, and they had the vision to help us see a greater vista there.
I was one of the first freedom riders in 1961, was very active for a decade, and just endless ways, many arrests, all over the country, not just the South. Dearborn, Michigan was as bad as anything in Alabama or Mississippi. And this, of course, does tie in with gays sensitive to the needs of others and volunteering and sacrificing. I think that's an untold story, pretty much, because for some reason no one's looked for it.
They had a sense of purpose. They were dedicated to a vision, to that vision. They had a sense of outrage that this vision was right, and in spite of the obstacles, the outrage which should motivate us to do something about it.
The person that I'm going to talk about is the person that I probably had the deepest connection with, and he both acted as an elder to me and also kind of, in my view, failed as an elder in a certain way. And that is James Leo Herlihy, who was an author and dramatist and is probably best known for writing the novel Midnight Cowboy. Well, first of all, he gave me intimacy without sex, which was very important to me at the time, because I had been kind of objectified sexually in some ways, and which we tend to do to each other, I think, in our community. But he also had a capacity to just, see your soul, and give you kind of an undivided attention in a way that you just kind of, I don't know, opened up in a way. He had a tremendous magnetism, and he had a lot of young men around him that looked to him for wisdom and guidance and nurturing. And one of the things that he did that I just love, and I think every gay elder should do, is cook for their... because it's wonderful to be fed by an older man, especially when you're young and hungry in more ways than one. He failed as a gay elder in the sense that he committed suicide. And even though he knew, he kind of told everybody, that he believed in, self-deliverance. And
hardest part of being an elder is the glaucoma, the osteoarthritis, the threat of prostate cancer, cancer of the esophagus. I'm missing some things here. Well, memory is failing. There are a lot of those aspects of being an elder. And I can understand why some people give up.
So still, when he did it, it was such a betrayal because he had so much left to give. And I think it's the lesson that I learned, and I think that is important for all of us to learn, is the reason that he committed suicide is he couldn't stand growing old. He couldn't stand the loss of his physical beauty and his attractiveness. He looked like a god when he was young, and he was extremely handsome as an older man. But he just couldn't grow old. He couldn't pass that threshold, the threshold that we're trying to, cross over now. And he succumbed to, getting a series of facelifts. Each one, made him look worse and worse, and he finally couldn't deal with it, and he did himself in. And that was a gift too, I guess, because I learned that I don't want to take that path, that's for sure. I want to grow into more meaning and value as I grow older.
I think the tragic suicide of James Leo Herlihy is a really good example of why we're all here today. Why the initiation into as a gay tribal elder is so important.
What is it that you seek?
I seek initiation as a gay tribal elder.
Alfredo, may you always be a bridge of understanding between languages, between cultures, between generations.
Alfredo, I bless the work that you do with young gay men, especially in the area of education of HIV and AIDS, for the awareness and the insights that you bring and share with others in that arena.
Alfredo, may the spirit that set the heavens in motion guide you and protect you in your path of service as you ignite and open the hearts of those you come in contact with, as you have ignited and opened the hearts of us.
My ancestors live up in the Andes Mountains, guided by the stars and the moons and this rain and all that stuff. What happened? Civilization, religion, culture, I don't know. It's the evolution, So I'm glad that I do this because I'm reclaiming that from my ancestors. The readings that are being provided to me It not only happens in Peru, happens in all indigenous cultures. Southeast Asia, Africa, Central, South America. And it's just, now what do I do with this? My moral obligation is to reclaim it and pass it.
Initiation is a very powerful thing. When you feel the group energy moving, it's very intimate, very personal, very immediate, and very powerful.
Most of my most meaningful initiations have come in dreams. And I've definitely had some, elder kind of initiation dreams. One that I think of, I was on a desert, and seeing myself as this kind of old, slightly derelict, a little unshaven man laughing with this kind of crazy wisdom. And then I transformed into a horse and started like galloping into onto the foreground. It's like a white crazy horse. And that was kind of an elder dream. Because I know some of the elders that I have been most impressed with, have kind of like a crazy kind of outsider energy. I think of Allen Ginsberg, for example, this kind of wild man, raving against the insanity of our culture and the injustice and hypocrisies, but with a tremendous kind of ecstasy, throughout it, abandon. And that's far from me, so that's something to strive toward, And we did inherit a mantle of some kind, with a challenge to, carry what we, discovered in the workshop, forward into life, so that it's not just a lot of ideas.
On the boulevard, I had already been raped, robbed at gunpoint. I was there for 2 months. I went to sleep twice. I weighed 90 pounds. I was on crack every day, speed every day, and, turning tricks all day long. And then I ran into Stephen, and he was working at the Van Ness Outreach program, and, they did intakes and stuff and asked, when's the last time you used, what do you use, went through the needle cleaning process, ate dinner, and then there was a group and stuff. I went a few times and talked to him. And he was somebody that I could look up to that was open about himself enough for me to have a guiding point.
You just ache for somebody like that, And we have strong, boundaries, unfortunately in our professional capacity, but my inclination was just to wrap him up in my arms and hold him, somehow make it better.
When I hear the word elder, I get a negative connotation to it in and of itself. I was actually raised until I was about 8 in a Mormon church. And I remember, the people being called elders, and in my opinion, they were all assholes, and they were extremely judgmental and shady. And they actually, when I was 18, they sent me a letter that they were excommunicating me as a member of the church because of my homosexual lifestyle. But I think that the person behind the title, elder, is more than that. And you can call it what you want. Stephen, you can call him what you want. To me, Stephen, to me, he's somebody that was there, that knew how to talk to somebody, that cared how to talk to somebody, to provide for somebody, to let somebody know that they were worth something, to show somebody there's better if you choose to take it. Here's how you get it. I'm 23 years old, and I'll have 2 years sober in 21 days. You don't see that every day. And I was somebody who happened to benefit from services that he offered to a younger generation. And I think that's amazing.
I think it's a natural part of our evolution as a people. We are the first generation, my generation, is the first generation of gay people because of history, who have the ability to bring this elder role into being in a conscious way. Other generations didn't have that opportunity because they were busy fighting other battles.
Two of the most marginalized groups in the society are the older and the younger. And if this conference can somehow do something about cohesiveness between the two marginalized groups and bring them into some kind of dialogue and understanding, why then something has been achieved that's extremely important, I think.
Hey, really nice to be here. Well, I'm glad you came.
I'm here because it's time. I'm here because all of us are here. I'm here because I'm angry too. And I'm angry because I'm lost here too, and I'm a native of this place. And I'm tired of hiding. And I know that I don't have a choice but to walk in the truth of who I am. So I give thanks to you. And I'm here so that we can look at these roles that we play of elder and youth and mentor and all those things. I usually don't even look at the village report because I don't see my face in there. And something told me to open it up. And I still didn't see my face, but I saw my mother and my sister and my friend and my elder's name in there. And I said, I'm showing up. And when I saw my sisters here with me, I just know I'm right where I need to be. And we're all right where we need to be right now. And so I give thanks for this moment. And I know that this day is going to unfold exactly as it has already been written. And I give thanks for that.
Right on.
If we were living among the Maasai in East Africa, every 7 years, the entire Maasai nation comes together and initiates, every 7 years, a new cycle of tribal elders. We're not there yet. But if elders aren't in the community doing their work, maintaining balance, maintaining harmony, caring for the spiritual well-being of the village, encouraging adults to assume their responsibility, we're in trouble. Adults have to assume their responsibility because they're the mentors of the youth. You're the bridge that's missing, and we desperately, desperately need you to be present. And youth, I think in our culture we put too much weight, we put too much responsibility on the shoulders of youth. They can't handle it. And the reason that happens is for commercial consumer reasons. And secondly, it's because older gay men end up moving to Palm Springs or a gated community somewhere or living in single occupancy rooms downtown and have no role for themselves. We belong to the people who need us most. That displaces the question of what should I do with my life and inserts for whom should I do it.
In 1969, before I left New York, the Stonewall riots happened. And the Stonewall riots were by those who couldn't hide. They couldn't hide. There was no way that they could not be seen. There is such an assimilation movement going on, not just in LA, but around the country. We want to be assimilated, and then we will be accepted. Well, that's what the Jews in Germany thought too. That if they were assimilated, they were safe. And the strange thing is that's where we were before Stonewall. We were assimilated. And for me, assimilation equals the closet, just as silence equals death.
5 minutes you want it to be. I'm actually scared of Ivy, so I do this with trepidation.
You didn't count the beginning when I was If we aren't vigilant now and deliberately be unto ourselves, true to our community, then many years from now, those people who are left behind, when the assimilationists are assimilated, like the transsexuals and the drag queens and the angry and loud gay and lesbian activists, the impolite ones who get in your face and make you think, and the sissy boys and the dykey dykes. Those are the people who will be left behind when assimilation is really running. And the sad thing is that at some point, we will be under attack. And then one more time, the ones that are left behind, the drag queens, the transgender, the sissy boys, the dykes, they're going to have to do Stonewall all over again. Thank you.
I think we need to preserve and not forget our history, our memory. We need to determine that gay and lesbian youth will in the future be spared pain and despair, anguish, and be permitted to live freely and openly in the pursuit of happiness. We need to establish now, beginning with ourselves, mutual support and, most important, interdependence between the generations. We need to expand the vision of our community, starting to empower the elders of the future.
Old white man culture? I mean, is that?
That's very stereotypical, but it's true.
I think that's very valid, though, to express. I mean, we're really here to talk about what pisses us off. So I think that's a really valid
Because
point.
my point, when I was coming up when I was 20, I never related to all that stuff that being gay was supposed to be, the stereotypes. So their culture is not something, I respect the history and all the trailblazing and all the active, you know, the getting our rights, but basically I don't like the inherited culture like Judy Garland and all that crap.
Right, and also this younger generation is already accustomed to more diversity. We were raised with feminism. We have a different social awareness than a lot of our elders did. So it's just sometimes hard to communicate.
Coming from the big movements, they see us as just not wanting to be involved, and they don't see the barriers that we have to getting to that point where we're all together and making a movement.
We're doing the same thing that they were doing, but in a different light, on a different level.
And yeah, I think just to add on to what you're saying, Skip, that there are more battles to be fought.
Right.
That not everything has been achieved,
right.
And that the younger generation is still fighting those battles. Yeah.
They see us as being lightweights. I've always experienced that myself. So it's, can we say conceit of...
Or that we take everything for granted.
Yeah, that we've enjoyed the spoils of their work.
Yeah.
They're preaching. They're like preaching, but not owning their own past.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. That's something that, especially in white gay male culture, you know, the older gay men have money and the younger ones don't, and it's like, well, what can I get? As opposed to just nurturing a relationship to nurture it.
It's a mistrust. It's like it's difficult to trust friendship because you think, what's in it? Do they want to have you sexually as opposed to just being your friend?
I don't know about the lesbian community, but I was talking to Michelle about the gay community. I like to call it, we're stuck in juvenilehood, where we're stuck in junior highwood. So much of our mentality is so childlike and based upon childish concepts. We need to just grow up. You know, to me it's about growing up and being adults. Absolutely, and getting off the cross, not being a teenager, and just becoming a mature adult.
The most beautiful thing I heard today was the admission by the elders that they need us, that we have something to contribute, that they offered us a sense of purpose. They offered us a sense of purpose, and I think a lot of people who said that they were lost today said they came here because they had no sense of purpose, and they want to give us that, and we need it. I need it. I need it.
The immense wealth of human beings that have changed the planet, you know, that are gay, but we don't get taught that in school. I was introduced to Whitman, and I never had any idea that Whitman was a gay man. Textbooks don't talk about that.
Yeah, Eleanor
and yeah, you have to find that out on your own, you know, and it's a very important thing, I think, to us. It's like the gay pride. I always felt, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had each float represented a historic character from our past, and you know, and really put that out there that here's who we are, folks. You know, we are Da Vinci. You know, we are Whitman. You know, we are Rimbaud. We are Baldwin.
Regardless of whether we're gay, lesbian, straight, or black or white, or whatever, is that sense of community that whenever there is a problem, whenever someone has pain, whenever someone is in need, that we all gather around. Their pain, their need is our pain and our need. We can move this revolution that was started even back beyond Don Hill Hefner's in my time. You know, it's been in the universe since I feel the beginning of time. Let's keep this ball rolling. Let's move it forward. Let's all do our share, and let's all care about each other.
As one of my teachers, Carol Proudfoot Edgar, states, ceremony reminds us that we occupy the current point in time and space, and that we are the current vessels. We return to acknowledging we are eternal beings responsible for holding the holy within our own lives, and through us passed on to future generations. And then she quotes the Hopi people, because as the Hopi people say, we have held the center, and so we endure. Creator, thank you for another day of life. Guide us and protect us, gay and lesbian people, and all our relations, as we awaken and move this day's visioning forwarded to life. Help us always ready to be treated our brothers, sisters, and Mother Nature's creations as we ourselves want to be treated, with love, justice, honor, dignity, integrity, and respect. For no one knows the time of his or her death. And when life fades like the fading sunset, let our eyes be clear, our hands and hearts free of bloodshed, destruction, hatred, or disrespect for Mother Earth, so that our spirits may move on without shame.
I think we could probably change the whole viewpoint towards elderly, because after all, when our generation which is rapidly approaching, it's 60, 65, we're going to be the majority of the population of America. So what can we do? Based on Indian values, based on other cultures and societies that still have a relevance and a respect for old people, although it's rapidly eroding in some parts of the world. Perhaps we can use them as an example of what to do to change it. I sincerely hope so.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. There's no such a thing as separation, that we're all interrelated. Everybody in this world is interrelated, and that we've got to be able to work together too. And that's one thing that, of course, with Indian people and with gay and lesbian people, that in working with the greater society here in America, that we all got to find some way of working together. It isn't a matter of us and them, because whenever you start thinking of us and them, it ain't gonna work, because we're all in the same boat. The boat rocks, we're all gonna get rocked. May the great mystery make sunrise in all of your hearts, and may your footsteps be good and strong in this world. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we say Amboinahi. That means we'll see you later.
Amboinahi?
Amboinahi.
Amboinahi.
Okay. Been good talking to you.
Okay. Right.